Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. We have a very interesting looking figure here to take a look at today. This is actually another of those figures that I just randomly stumbled upon on eBay, as there seems to be more and more of those popping up as time goes on, which I am loving the fact that they are, because sometimes you can get some pretty darn nice figures from those random ones that just show up on eBay. This one was one that I initially didn't think it was going to be all that nice of a figure, but it looked interesting enough, and the fact that it was kind of a Jurassic Park inspired Dilophosaurus with an articulated jaw and the really nice looking greenish coloration had me intrigued enough to purchase it, and also the fact that it was only like $10, so it wasn't super expensive. It wasn't anything that was obviously going to break the bank, and being a figure that I had never seen or heard of before, I figured why not throw in a purchase and see what it looks like in person. And at worst, it may not show up looking that great, but I can always repaint it to make it look much nicer, and that's kind of my intentions. Once I actually received it, I was definitely still under that same impression. The figure as a whole isn't that great. Paint-wise, it's not very good, and it's also got kind of like that trademark warped leg type of a look that continuously happens with these style figures from China, where they're just kind of like almost bootleg type figures. And speaking of bootleg, I have my suspicions that this one might actually be a bootleg of a figure that some of you may know and love, which would be the iToy Dilophosaurus. So we're going to bring that one in a bit later and kind of compare it with this figure to see if I think that it is in fact a bootleg of that. But regardless, we're going to go ahead and take a closer look at it first, so let's go ahead and do that right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of the Dilophosaurus, you can see actually some decent paint application to the face as far as like the different tones of color used. They do have quite a few different variations of like lighter and darker greens, some reddish browns, some reds, just generally quite a bit of coloration included here on the face, but it's not really all that well done, and it's really sloppy. If you look in the eye area, the eye, although it has a glossy appearance to it, so it has a bit of a realistic eye shine, but the eye is really sloppily painted. It's a yellow eye with a black pupil, and that paint is just definitely not very good as far as the application goes. The crest of the Dilophosaurus has like a green that transitions to a red up at the top, and although it looks okay, it doesn't look overly sloppy. The actual detailing aspect of the figure up close, you can see for the most part doesn't look that great, and it's kind of like smoothed out. It's a little washed out as far as the detailing aspect goes. The actual texturing of the face does sport some pretty fun detailing, though. Has some decent skin texture. You can see the nostrils sculpted right there. You can see inside the mouth, the teeth are sculpted, but they're really sloppily painted, like horribly sloppily painted. As far as like this side actually looks pretty good. Over here, the teeth appear to be fairly nicely painted, but over here you can see that paint is just kind of all over the place. And same deal as far as like the paint here on the lower jaw. You can see the tongue is in there. It's painted with a realistic coloration, but the teeth are just like painted all over the place. The entire inside of the mouth is just kind of a mess. Of course, we do have an articulated jaw, and it seems to work okay. It doesn't like drop open, but it does feel like it could potentially be a little bit loose, but it still feels alright. The eye looks a little better painted on this side, but still not really that great on either side. You do have a frill for our Dilophosaurus. Very Jurassic Park-like straight away as far as that goes, and also the actual sculpting of the frill has kind of that very Jurassic Park style, like texturing to the frill, which is something that sometimes companies that kind of take this Jurassic Park style look for a Dilophosaurus to kind of mess that aspect up, but I feel like they did, hit the nail pretty much right on the head as far as that goes, but it's just not really all that great looking. It does have some nice like creasing and everything going on as far as the frill goes, and I feel like with some decent paint application it could look pretty nice. What we have here paint wise is okay, but it's nothing that I would say is amazing. It does have a nice mixture of like greens and kind of like a reddish orange, which is similar to that red that we see up there on the face, but you also have like a darker green that runs the length of the border of the frill as well. And then as we come back here into the neck region, you can see that the actual texturing to the skin texture here in the neck does look quite nice, and I feel like it's just pretty much begging for a repaint so that that detail can shine through. You have a darker green up here on the back that runs the course of the body, and you actually do have some paint variation here included on the back of the frill. actually very similar to what we saw in the front, and it's not something you see too often. Most times they kind of like skip the back of the frills of the Dilophosaurus, but they did add paint application to this one. But again, the texturing looks really quite nice. You have a white coloration here in the throat region for the Dilophosaurus. As you move down into the body, it has that very Jurassic Park style look, as far as like that very thin and slender style Dilophosaurus. Nice arm sculpt, some nice musculature included within them. Has like some fuzz or something on its fingers right here that must have came with it. You can see that the hands then transition to that darker green as you move out onto the hands. The nails are painted with a black coloration, a nice glossy black, so they shine fairly realistically. You can see some more really nice detailing here in the stomach region. Really, really gorgeous looking skin texture. But again, I really do have suspicions that this sculpt and detail may be thanks to EyeToy and not this company here that created this, whoever the company is, because there's no brand attached to it. But I can understand why, if you're stealing other people's sculpts, potentially. Don't want to say straight away, but it really, really reminds me of the EyeToy version. But you can definitely see that, again, the musculature is quite nicely displayed here in the leg. And you also have the foot sculpt, which looks a little sloppily sculpted in general. Like the area right here is really oddly thin, but the nails are painted with a black, given a bit of a glossy appearance. You do have the dew claws back there. And as we move up here into the tail, you can see some nice creasing right here behind the thigh. Some pretty decent color variation, as you have a nice healthy mixture of different lighter and darker greens throughout the figure, but it's not really anything amazing. Over here on this side, you're not really going to see too much in the neck skin department because we can't get in there very well with the frills sort of in the way. But body-wise, you're not really going to see too much difference on this side either, because as you can see, looking at it here, it's almost in exactly the same position. So almost pretty much a neutral position as far as the body goes. The legs are in the same spot. The arms are in the same spot. You can pretty much make the arms and legs on the opposing side disappear when looking at it from right here. So that means that they are definitely in a neutral position. But the paintwork continues to look okay, I guess. But I feel like maybe a darker wash to bring more life to the paint application would have helped, which is something they definitely did not do. But otherwise, I mean, it's okay as far as the detailing aspect goes, but I'm really concerned about it being a bootleg, so let's go ahead and get the EyeToy version and bring it in. So here is the EyeToy version with this kind of potential bootleg version, and although it's really, really miles of difference as far as like the overall beauty aspect goes, the EyeToy version is gorgeously painted, gorgeously sculpted. I feel like the similarities are pretty much on point as far as those head sculpts go. They look very, very similar, but obviously not nearly as nice on this bootleg version. And when we actually look at the back of the body, although the limbs clearly have been repositioned, the body definitely looks very similar in comparison to the, EyeToy version. Again, I can't say for sure there's difference as far as like the positioning of the tail, and the legs are in very different positions. But even looking at kind of like the legs here, it looks like maybe they've just repositioned the legs a little bit, but of course using the same sculpts. The arms are similarly positioned, but shockingly, they might have actually corrected the positioning of the arms as far as them being pronated on the bootleg version, which is really weird. But the underside, we'll take a look. Very similar, like right here in the chest region, you can see it kind of like that line right there. You can see that same line right here. I can't really say for sure, but definitely like right here, like those skin wrinkles right there and right here, they look pretty much identical. So I really do think that the potential of this being a bootleg of the EyeToy version is very, very much so a strong possibility. But again, I cannot say absolutely for sure, but I'm pretty confident of it. The figure as a whole doesn't stand if you try to position it without the tail touching. If you try to stand it here, it takes a tumble. So for it to stand, especially with those warped legs, which you can see quite clearly, it has to balance on its tail in sort of a tripod position, or just potentially like the position of the dinosaurs, just stopping for a moment to look around and relax a little. But regardless, the balance is non-existent. As far as a size goes, for a length from the head to the tail, you are looking at about the 8¼ inch range, or about 21 centimeters. And then for a height, and you may not have been able to see that all that well from your position, but that's what it is. For a height, about 5 inches or 13 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Peppo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Dilophosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our random unknown Dilophosaurus from eBay, and you can definitely see that in comparison to these figures, it does sport a pretty good size. I would say it's a pretty decently sized medium range figure. Not large, maybe it's like medium approaching large, but not quite. But hopefully next to these figures, you'll again have a decent idea at least of the size. So this random unknown Dilophosaurus from eBay is quite an interesting figure, but it's not very good. The overall sculpting of the body looks pretty decent, although very washed out in some areas, but at the same time it's still half decent as far as the actual texturing to the body goes. But after looking at the figure there with the iToy version, I am very confident that at least certain aspects of this figure were taken from the iToy version. Obviously, the iToy one didn't have things like the frill or anything, so this is kind of like a recreated sort of a bootleg of the iToy version. It's interesting because when you take a figure like this and you kind of reposition the body and then you add things like a frill and stuff, does it still qualify as a bootleg or is it now just a custom? But again, the detail that may have been taken, probably has been taken from the iToy Dilophosaurus, did not translate very well to this figure. The bootlegging process has clearly wiped out a lot of detail that was quite vibrant and beautiful on the original iToy version, and now looks very much so bootleggish on this version. The paint as well, not so great. There's a lot of coloration to it as far as like different variations of greens and reds and stuff, but it's not all that great as far as the application, and even the tones of color that they've used, like that darker green is almost like a Christmas tree green, and it's a little glossy. It just doesn't look good. It doesn't look natural on the figure. So I feel like, again, like I had stated earlier in the review, I really want to repaint this because I feel like with a repaint it could look pretty nice, but what we have here currently, paint-wise, not so much. The inside of the mouth as well is a total disaster as far as the paint application goes, and so is the eye area, all of which is really sloppily painted and just generally doesn't look all that good as far as the paint application aspect goes. So as far as the sculpt goes, again, pretty confident it's a stolen sculpt from iToy, but then repositioned and kind of turned it into like a custom version of an iToy Dilophosaurus with less detail. The paint, not very good. It also has warped legs, so that's pretty much like to be expected at this point from this style of figure. And just generally, it's kind of like 50-50. It could be nice with some nice paint application. It might be something fun to buy for a repaint project, but if you're going to buy it just to get a really cool version of a Jurassic Park style Dilophosaurus, there are plenty of way better figures out there to purchase as far as that goes. But if you do in fact want to pick this up, I will include a link in the description to where you can do that on eBay, so make sure you check the description, go buy this interesting Dilophosaurus, and make sure you also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.